Last time we talked about the darkest night, the midnight call that changed everything, when the bottom fell out and a mother's heart was cracked wide open. But what happens after the storm passes? When the chaos quiets, just enough for the ache to settle in. Today, we're learning and leaning into, part of the most people that, the hardest part that most people don't even talk about. I call it the in-between, the rebuild. It's the stretch of the journey where the big crisis is over, but the healing still feels very fragile. In boundaries, it's when these boundaries cause more battles before they bring peace. When your child starts to come back to life, but trust is still shaky. When you pray and believe, but everything in you still feels like it's held together by tape. This is the healing that hurts before it helps. And if you're here today, if you're in that sacred, messy middle, I want you to know you're not doing it wrong. You're doing the hardest, holiest work there is. And today we're going to talk about it. The title I gave this is When Healing Hurts, a mom's journey through boundaries, backlash, and breakthroughs. Tammy Kennington, thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be with you again, Laine. Thank you.
Welcome to Warfare Parenting, faith-driven strategies for struggling parents of teens and adult children. I'm your host, Laine Lawson Craft. You're in the right place if you're battling with prodigal children, facing family crises, or seeking spiritual guidance in parenting. Today, we'll equip you with powerful biblical strategies to reclaim your child's destiny and restore hope in your family. Let's step into this faith-filled journey of hope and healing together. Listen, Tammy, you had a very major crisis with your son. We talked about that in the first episode. So if you didn't get the first episode with Tammy, you must listen. It is amazing and very powerful about her middle of the night call when her son was threatening suicide. What were the first few weeks, Tammy, look like when y'all got back home from this first event?
When everybody arrived home, we were incredibly nervous. We just weren't sure what to expect during the next few weeks. And I would say we were really all walking on eggshells. We were afraid that we would turn around and leave our son maybe an hour too long, and he might actually fulfill that desire that he expressed the night when the suicide hotline called me. So it was really like walking a tightrope. It was so uncomfortable. And we took a lot of steps to mitigate as much as we could. We locked down things that we thought might be harmful, that might be used. Just really practical kinds of things that we did. We'd have a lot of check-ins with our son. And we definitely increased the number of times he was seeing his counselor, all of those kinds of things.
Well, what was the biggest surprise or shock about the recovery process that no one could, not any of your training, Tammy, could have prepared you for?
The length of the healing process. He, in fact, is still healing. We discovered that he had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, on top of a mood disorder, on top of the anxiety disorder. So it was just a whole lot woven into that struggle for him, and just the length and the endurance that his healing has required, even as a family, has been the biggest surprise.
Well, I know part of the process we talked about in episode 1 was boundaries. When you started implementing these boundaries, and a lot of us have problems doing that. Did he have backlash or did he rebel against any of the boundaries?
He definitely pushed back. There were things that we had asked about in the contract that he did not agree with later on. Even though he had signed that contract, there were things that were very difficult. There were a lot of limits on computer use, for example. There were a lot of limits that made life uncomfortable for him. And that's really common when you've got somebody who's struggling with any kind of addiction, whether that's an addiction to a substance, whether that's addiction to pornography, because those boundaries are set there to protect that individual from himself or herself.
Yeah, and they have to be there. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, are there?
No, they absolutely have to be there. And there will be setbacks, absolutely. But that's where those consequences can be really helpful when it's all in black and white and it's written down. Even as a mama, when your heart hurts for that child, you want to rescue them. I'm a rescuer by nature. But when it's black and white and you know the right thing to do, it is so helpful.
When you look back and you were in this, healing process after the trauma y'all been through, what you've been through, did you second guess any of your choices?
Probably every day. Yeah, absolutely. We did. And we just didn't know, are we doing the right thing? Are we being too hard on him? Are our expectations too much? But relying on that community that we had talked about in that first episode for us was imperative. It was essential. And it was really a lot about discovering the next right thing sometimes. It was asking the Lord, okay, I am so insufficient, Father, in this. I just don't know the right thing. Please show us what to do.
Well, how did you stay grounded in truth when your emotions were so high? How did you do it?
I dove into research. It just helps me so much when I can understand a little bit more about what's happening. So that was an area that really supported just my hope. I think in realizing that there was there was hope for healing, there was support for what we were doing, and then just spending a lot of time talking with my husband about these things because we still struggled to remain on the same page even years later. As I mentioned, we're just two very different people. When you see things through a different lens than your spouse, these are the sorts of things that can tear marriage apart. So we really had to work with one another and then rely on people for prayer.
That is so good. You talked earlier about relapses, step backwards. How did y'all deal with that? How do you handle them emotionally and spiritually when your child does have a setback or a relapse?
It was very challenging, and even this long road of recovery, it's still wrought with challenges, no matter how far along on that path you are, because you've learned to respond in a certain way. For me, that way is fear, that way is worry, that way is assuming that the worst might happen. So I think part of that was realizing relapse or the step backs are common. We're moving ahead, but it's just like a child who's learning to walk. When you were teaching that baby to walk, they still fell down and they get up and start again. So it's just part of the journey. And I think realizing that can be really helpful.
I think you said it perfectly. I think when we realize that healing is a process, and sometimes a step backwards or relapse is really a big part of the healing, right?
It is because when your child or your young adult realizes, okay, this doesn't mean I've failed. This means I'm still human and I still have a real struggle here. And that probably was one of the most difficult things for me as a mom, because my son would equate his relapse or his step back with a failure, and as and failing the Lord. So really learning how to walk with them through that and guide them, speak into their lives, that is so key.
I want to go into community for you. What was some of the most helpful support when you were going through this battle and in this recovery portion of the journey? Was it friends, church, counseling? Did they all play a big part? Can you just speak on that a minute?
I would like to say that all of that was there for us. We did not feel comfortable at the time sharing with our church family, because when he was younger, and we found out that he was struggling with some mental health disorders, there was some judgment and in the youth group, among the leadership. So we really honestly felt the stigma and didn't have a community there. And that's part of the reason I think I'm so open about my story, and because we do need community and so many struggle. We had a great family support. My in-laws were incredible, and they walked with us through so much of our hard time. And my mother-in-law is an incredible prayer warrior. So we had people in our extended family praying, her Bible studies praying, and that I know it's made a difference.
You talk about you being hurt by some people being judgmental, and that's a trust thing. How did you learn? I think the hardest part when our children mess up or battle, their own personal beyond their control, right? Um, how do we learn to trust our children again? How did you do that?
A lot of it has to do with extending opportunities for trust, and then seeing your child succeed in those. It comes a little bit at a time. It is a process, just like that healing, but it's a beautiful thing to behold. And I think another key component, Laine, is trusting God, realizing He is far more capable. He is all powerful. He has my child in His hands. No matter what my child's age, my child will always be my child. And the Lord is the one who's going to be with him through every situation.
That is so good, Tammy. I just know so many people can benefit from that. And listen, we're talking, some of the journeys like mine were self-destructive things, stuff like, just making wrong choices over and over again. This was a life or death situation for you in the literal sense. And you really had to start all over in most areas. And um, I know at some points, Tammy, did you ever get low? I mean, did you ever just want to give up? And if so, what got you through those times?
Yeah, I absolutely was low. I thought that our son would never be able to be well enough to be on his own, honestly. And if that had been what God had for us, we would have adjusted. But I have had so many tears spilled on the rug of my room, just praying over my boy. And it's going to happen. We're so human, and we want so badly for our children to be happy. And in this world, that can be a challenge, especially when there's trauma involved, especially when mental health is challenged. And as a mama, we just sometimes struggle to see that new thing growing that God has for us. So absolutely, I would expect any parent who's walking through something in a similar way is going to struggle with their feelings. They may need to see somebody because of depression. There is such a thing as secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. So I think it's really important to stay aware of those things. I think truly that my husband, and our relationship was one thing that kept me going. The other was that we had, as I mentioned before, these little ones to take care of. So I couldn't focus solely on one child. And without the Lord, I don't know how anybody gets through it.
Don't either. Speaking of that, were there any scriptures that you held on to during this time that you can remember, like you just stood on?
Yes, my favorite scripture the Lord gave me years ago, and He repeats to me often when I'm just listening for Him, is that He will restore the years the locust have eaten. And I just stand on that and I pray it, and it is my war cry.
Well, I know, Tammy, many people have been following this through episode 1 and now 2. If there's a mom or a dad or a loved one that is in the middle of this messy middle, what's one thing you would say directly to their heart today?
I want to just encourage that person, that mama or that daddy, that loved one who is just brokenhearted over their child. It's hard to see the end when you're at the beginning. It's hard to walk through that messy middle. I would just encourage you to move ahead, keep going, and see if there's that one person that you can trust with your story who will walk with you without judgment and lean into that relationship. That might be someone from church. It might not be. It might be a relative. It might not be. There's somebody that you can build community with, and seek a larger community, a community like this one, where you can share your heart and your hopes for your child and trust that someone's going to hold them up and love on them through the word and through prayer.
Well, I'm kind of glad we're talking about community again. We are hopeful that we can begin warfare parenting small groups all over the country using the Parents Battle Plan and warfare parenting as the curriculum. So if you're listening today and you would like to start a warfare parenting small group, building a community of believing parents that love the Lord but are struggling raising teens and adult children, please just go to the website and we will give you more information. But Tammy, speaking of information, please let us know how a parent or loved one that is in the messy middle of a battle or in the healing part and would like to reconnect or connect with you. How can they do that?
Please reach out to me at tammykennington.substack. You can also find me at www.tammykennington.com.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with today?
Just that the Lord is faithful. Your child may come out with an incredible testimony for Him, and certainly He is able to heal all of our wounds.
So beautiful, Tammy. Listen, friend, if you're still in the middle where hope feels fragile and the next step is unclear, I want to remind you that this isn't the end of the story. Healing doesn't always arrive like a lightning bolt or a sudden breakthrough. Sometimes it looks like just getting out of your bed when everything, if you wants to stay under the covers, it looks like driving your child to yet another counseling session when you're not even sure it's helping. It looks like whispering, Jesus, I trust you, even when your heart is screaming, I don't understand. That kind of faith, that's warrior faith. And I want you to hear me clearly today. The middle isn't where you lose, it's where God does his deepest, most beautiful work. Even when it's silent, even when it's slow, even when nothing seems to be changing. He is refining, restoring, and redeeming. Don't give up. Don't stop praying. Don't stop showing up. God is still working even here, especially here. So listen, Don't forget to go to my website, lainelawsoncraft.com. Many free resources are there. All of Tammy's information is in the show notes. And we thank you for coming into Warfare Parenting Podcast. We are so happy you have found us. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe so you can listen every time we're on. And also leave a review. Thank you again. We love you. Thank you for joining us on Warfare Parenting. Remember, you can overcome even the most challenging parenting battles with faith and the right strategies. If this episode has touched your heart or provided valuable insights, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your support helps other struggling parents find the hope and guidance they need. Until next time, remain steadfast in faith and remember, together we never give up on our families. Visit my website too for my new book, Warfare Parenting, a daily battle plan to fight for your child. The first 10 days are free on my website and many other free resources. Go to lainelawsoncraft.com.